Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. Powered by Leadership Choices.
We thought about the topic of leadership, we thought about the topic of teams, and then the big question that we had overall was how to make an organization adaptable. And as we all don't know how the organization looks like, and if there's really like this one blueprint, which we don't think there is, but we certainly had a hunch of saying, well, most certainly organizations that will survive more successfully in the future will be the ones that have, well, in the core, a stronger focus on the topic of self-organization.
We need to disregard hierarchy. We need to find those people who are willing to step into that journey with me. So I will be pulling people in from across the value chain. I don't care what level they are on. Those that are ready to change, those that are ready to think bigger, they will be part of this transformational group that I will be leading. And then we will sort of design the new normal, the new business backbone for this company.
I think it's not just about innovation. People think about, innovation is maybe one of the driver, but it's not just only about innovation. Innovation alone or technology innovation would not give you a sustainable growing future. I think you need to think about how to balance my portfolio in terms of what the society is going.
Hello, my name is Karsten Drath and you're listening to a new episode of Leaders Talk. Today's episode is about how leaders and organizations can and should prepare for tomorrow. What can we learn from the current situation? What can we learn from the current pandemic? And we will have a very interesting panel discussion in a minute with 5 high caliber guests, but listen for yourself. The next part of the session is going to be recorded, and this is our today's panel discussion on preparing leaders and organizations for tomorrow. And before we start, or as we start, I would like to properly introduce the panel to you. So who do we have sitting on the bar chairs virtually on the stage, ready to share their experiences with us? So first of all, we have Luise Bang. Luise is a person that has a brand of turning companies agile, of making companies agile. She has done this with Danfoss or at Danfoss. She has done this, at least tried to, at Bombardier. And now she is working at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Vestas, who have a joint venture to develop offshore wind parks. And we will learn what she learned about changing a culture into more adaptability, which is something that we heard is a key thing. So welcome, Luise. Next panelist is Xiaoqun Klever. Xiaoqun is a very experienced technology person who combines a deep understanding of technology with a deep understanding on how the world of senior management, top management works in different industries. So she was instrumental in getting the new S/4HANA product within SAP off the ground, and was also instrumental within Vonier, which is the kind of Swiss equivalent of Axel Springer, for the digitalization strategy of this group. And she is now a board member of multiple boards in Infineon, Capgemini, Allianz Austria, to name a few. And is also a specialist on Chinese culture and Chinese business. So welcome, Xiaoqun. And we have Jürgen Lux. Jürgen is, at one point, used to be kind of a regular consultant, but then he developed into something that is called asset-based consulting, which is lingo for programming software or producing a software product or a series of software products. And Jürgen has built a company in a company. So that's the definition of an entrepreneur, I would say. And this company is now standing alone within the motherhood. And so we will talk about the challenges, what this brings with that fact of having a company in the company. So welcome, Jürgen, to the panel. And we have Dr. Marcell Vollmer, who is the Chief Innovation Officer of Celonis. So Celonis, if you don't know this, is one German unicorn. And what I learned from Marcell, it is not only a unicorn. So unicorn is a company with a market capitalization of more than 1 billion. It is actually a Pegasus. So that's a unicorn with wings, if you recall. And this is a company that has a market capitalization well of above 2 billion. So it's a big success story in the startup scene. And Marcell used to be the Chief Procurement Officer of SAP, used to be Chief Digitalization Officer of Ariba and the Cloud Business Group within SAP. And so we will talk about also the differences between the culture of a large enterprise and a startup culture. So welcome, Marcell. Great to have you with us. And we have, last but by no means least, we have Daniel Vonier, just because V happens to be the last name here, last letter. So Daniel came from Deutsche Telekom to SAP, and he has not a very small task. His task is to drive the organizations into unlearning hierarchy. So how do you do this? How do you actually unlearn hierarchy in an organization? And this is our panel for today. So please welcome our panelists. All right. So first question goes to Luise. Luise, Danfoss, that's a story where you drove a company into adaptability, flexibility, involving new ways of working, agility. Then there was Bombardier. If you compare the two, what was different in Bombardier than Danfoss? What have you learned?
Yeah, so what have I learned? So first of all, there are two large corporations. One has a Scandinavian origin and the other one has a Canadian origin. And I think already the cultural background is maybe where you find the biggest difference between those two. So at Danfoss, what I learned is there was not only a will to wanting to change, but there was also I call it the breadth, meaning because it is family owned, because it was Danish, because it was a wealthy company, there was a lot of breadth and time, no pressure to do this change. So we could really do the change management in the proper way, make sure that everybody comes along on that journey. At Bombardier, that was a different ballgame. Bombardier was in a deep crisis and probably still is. There was no time, no money, and the people were already worn out. So to drive change in a company where there's so much pressure and actually very little time, I think is almost a mission impossible. I'm sure some people would be capable of it, but in my particular case, I had to say stop and say this is simply too harsh conditions to drive true transformation without really jeopardizing the people's health and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for your openness. Xiaoqun, you have a lot of. I would like to focus on your time at Ringier. So Ringier, as an equivalent of the Axel Springer Group in Switzerland, had a strategy of changing or getting out of this dying print business and investing into digital startups and then combining them into kind of a cluster, a technology cluster. And your role was CTO at that point in time. Xiaoqun, can you explain us the challenges that you are facing with kind of getting this together or getting the benefit out of that idea of the integration?
Okay, I think everybody knows the media industry is struggling, and their competitors or the major challenges are technology giants, right? So the advertising industry is the main revenue driver for them, but the advertising cake, the majority part is shared by Google and Facebook and all these technology giants. The media industry by default was not a technology native industry. So people are more kind of still in the phase, or how do I say, in terms of bring what we have done offline, like of the paper, into online, but kind of do not change the business model. It's just bring the things online. So, and then you probably also observed in media industry, whether it's Axel Springer, whether it's Bertelsmann and ProSiebenSat.1 and Vonier, to diversify the risk. They have built a huge portfolio with majority share or minority share of startups in all kinds of online businesses, from selling the glasses, the furniture, to selling houses, used cars, or concert event. These are the kind of all different, and also they diversified regionally, geographically into Africa and Asia. I think this more or less everybody has done the same job. But the challenge is if you have a huge portfolio of different kind of a business in it, with a different kind of a maturity in terms of a digital maturity, how do you try to derive some sustainable assets for the future? And this is a big challenge, I think, for everybody. When I joined the Vonier, I said, the only way to do this is you have to derive the knowledge of your customers, knowledge of your market, and the knowledge of your day-to-day transactional business, and that part, derive it and use that part to build a platform for future business. And on top of that, you have to change the business model from advertising revenue as a cash cow to recurring revenues and upselling and cross-selling. So those are the strategies, and I do not want to go into the details. The main challenge is for people who has been managed in terms of top line and bottom line as a financial kind of only KPIs, to monitoring the performance. It's very difficult for them to cross silos, to collaborate, to join together to build a new business model across the group. At the group level, it's very difficult. And also for people kind of to change what they're doing in the past 20 years and try to create a new revenue source is create a lot of fear emotionally for people. And this actually, I think, is a big hurdle for a lot of companies to transform. It's more on the emotional side, psychologically, both at the leadership level, how leaders to manage their own emotion and the emotion of their people, and how to help people to unlearn what they've done in the last years, to learn new things. And those are the leadership skills I realized were not very well, let's say, prepared in majority of organizations. Were not there.
Thank you. And you were part of the board. I mean, you really had, one should think, well, you just say that needs to be done and then it should happening. So what was the number one resistance that you faced?
Karsten, before you go on, may I give you an advice from our technical crew? We have so great panelists here. Could you stop your screen of presentation and bring the panelists in the center of the screen?
This is a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think as a member of executive board, you are sitting between the chairs. The top, let's say, on you is the supervisory board or the shareholder, right? And I think before COVID, what we all observe is even everybody's doing digital initiatives. The shareholder side is still very keen on a quick return on capital employed and return on investment. So you need to show very quick something, what you are doing has impact on the revenue side or on the cost side. This is one pressure I think all the executives have, including the CEOs. On the other hand, in terms of transforming a whole company, it's not some single hero can do it. You need kind of the whole system to move and at a pretty fast pace. And that requires a lot more than just, the executive say, I want this and that, right? Everybody's saying from strategy to the shop floor operation, it takes 2 years. If, the strategy can change within 2 hours. But the whole organization, the whole system to run really at the fast pace to implement this strategy takes years. And these are, I think, the dilemmas a lot of executives have, including myself. I realize the hands are bound. We do not have the entire freedom to be able to do the things we would like to do. And because the understanding of at the supervisory board level, and also to change the whole organization, it requires a lot more than just a few executives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Great analysis. And Jürgen, so your story is that you actually are one of the few leaders that has the ability to build up a business from scratch. So this asset-based consulting, the RegTech group that you have formed within Bearing Point, this is something that you started and you're still in it. So this is, I think, a great story. I would like to shed light on one particular incident that even made it to the press, so it's public knowledge. At one point, you had a problem with your software, and you were on the title pages of magazines that you didn't like a lot. So what was the impact? What happened there, and what role did the culture play for that, Jürgen?
Thank you, Karsten, and hello to everyone here in this discussion. First of all, perhaps it was really a dream to wear on a cover page, and to be very precise, it was not a magazine. It was the German Börsenzeitung. And we made it on the front page, unfortunately not with a positive but with a negative headline, that with the problems we have been facing with our software product, we would set the entire financial regulation at risk, at least for the German market. That was more or less the headline. And of course, that was a very tough time, approximately 1 year, 18 months, until we could resolve the issue and came back into more calm waters. Nevertheless, your question regarding what did it change or what was the main impact on our culture and what was so important. First of all, I think it's mainly an exercise where we were not used to. Our culture as mainly a consulting company, Bearing Point, is not used to be on the cover page. And interestingly, it was less our customers itself who blamed us for the situation, but interestingly, it was more our internal organization, and probably you know that Bearing Point is a partner organization, a partner-led organization, and unfortunately, I received a lot of calls from colleagues who said, "Well, Jürgen, what are you doing? You set the entire company at risk." On the other hand, it gave us the chance to further develop our cultural inspiration, because in such a crisis, it was quite obvious that only if we work very closly together, and it's then mainly a question of trust, how you can come out of this difficult situation. And now, having mastered this challenge, I would say we are definitely much stronger than we were before.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that will be one of those crises where you kind of learn and come out stronger. And then there is another case where you are building this company within the company. Why do you do this?
Well, the reason is very simple. To make a long story short, it's mainly because our business model is not any longer a professional service consulting business model, and it's much more a pure software or managed service business model. And it was for many, many years, it was no problem because the business was so small. But now going the business to almost 600 people and an overall turnover of 100 plus million a year, that's a different ball game. Mm-hmm. Today, we have employed approximately 400 software developers, and a software developer is another animal, so to say, than a pure consulting employee. And it was quite obvious if we want to continue this success story for the next years, we have to change something. And to change something means we are today more or less a completely independent organization within the consulting group of Bearing Point. That means we have our own HR department, we have our own finance department, we have our own marketing department, we have a different structure, how to onboard people, how to train people. And now we are really starting to come to the final points. We have just started an initiative to discuss what kind of values and principles we want to follow in future to build our own NDA and culture for the future.
Mm. Thank you for that, Jürgen. And Marcell. So Marcell is a very, very interesting person. And one of the key features that I observe with Marcell is his speed of walking. So when I walk alongside Marcell, I need to jog. That's his normal speed. And I think it is also okay to share that you do like Red Bull Light these days, but that's kind of your natural nutrition. So you are a driven person, Marcell, if I may say that, and with all the utmost respect for that. And you changed your world from a large company, 100,000 employees, if that is enough in SAP, and moved into Celonis, which is a Munich and New York headquartered, very hip startup, growing very fast. So Marcell, in terms of culture, in terms of how to operate, what are the main differences that you came across?
Thanks, Karsten, and good morning, everyone. So you perfectly described me, Red Bull. I just had one this morning. I really like it. Speed matters. That's what I'm absolutely convinced about. But also, you need to have strategic thinking and also deliver quality to meet customer experience. No doubt about that. It's not only about the speed. But one change, what I experienced, and this was really amazing, seeing SAP, and I see Xiaoqun is here. She knows SAP also very well. That this is a tremendously large organization and very complex. And when you really want to get things done, you also recognized, wow, such a big organization has its challenges. SAP is an amazing company, no doubt about that. But it is also, when you want to really drive things and execute, I think it's a good question also, how can you make that happen? And I figured out that Celonis, when I learned about the technology, I was totally excited. Probably not everyone knows about it, but thanks also for your great description. Celonis basically provides a kind of X-ray on all your IT systems, gives you a visualization and allows you, based on AI and machine learning capabilities, to enhance all your processes. So basically, you only need to focus on your operational suite, and then you can optimize and automate all the back-end processes. And I learned, wow, this is an amazing technology, and the unicorn status is something what happened 1.5 years back. It seems also that the adoption and the recognition in the capital market, at least for some of the investors, was very high, because it is one of the very few European technologies which you see are going out now into the world. Where do you have that? So I'm using now an iPhone. I use my computer. I use Google every day. Facebook sometimes for updates, a little bit less in the last months, I have to admit. And all of that I order regularly from Amazon. All of that basically is US based and developed there. I know China is also very innovative, no doubt about that. But I think more impactful for us is definitely what I see is coming mainly or predominantly from Silicon Valley. And Celonis is one of the, probably I should speak a little bit faster and not to bore people.
Niels, could you put your on mute? I'm sorry, Marcell.
No worries.
Please continue.
Awesome. And so basically with that, I got really excited about seeing that technology from Europe is conquering the world and really adding a lot of value. And what I also experienced, Celonis has an amazing success story in growing. 2 years back, the company didn't have 200 people. When I joined August last year, the company had close to 600 people. As of today, we are very close to 1,000. So we are growing really a very fast pace. And this is also showing a little bit the dynamic, not only that fortunately we are more on the winning side of the digital transformation and the current situation. I don't want to say that anything is good about COVID-19. It's horrible, a disease, and there's no positive thing about that. On the other side, what we also observe is there's an acceleration in the digital transformation. Xiaoqun described it perfectly about what's happening in the media industry. I think more or less all companies are now impacted by that. And video conferences, a virtual conference, what you're doing, by the way, congrats for the great technical organization. This is now common. Everyone is doing that. Mm-hmm. And this is really also showing that we have some positive things. What we also see, and you ask about the different sizes of the companies, the speed of getting decisions, going into a new market, opening a new office. We are now releasing that we open offices in Madrid, in France, and some other countries. So that's really something also where you see, wow, you sit together in the morning, in the afternoon the decision, you make a communication, and then it gets done. That's really something I have to admit I really enjoy, and is a big difference in the speed of execution. And this is something also, you mentioned my speed, it energizes me, and I hope also being a part of that to contribute to the success by bringing in some ideas and also helping that hopefully we will take the right decisions and continue to grow very fast now, going from the 100 million revenue, almost 1,000 people, now to the next level, and hopefully become a similar successful story what SAP definitely is.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Marcell. Now, Daniel has an easy job. So he just came to SAP from a company that is even larger. So it was actually a smaller company then. And his only job is just to make sure that SAP is losing or has less hierarchy, unlearning hierarchy. Daniel, what kind of mission are you on? Can you fill us in on that?
Thank you. Yeah. So the notion of unlearning hierarchy is certainly a deliberate provocation that we started with. Actually, we thought about our organizational development practice within SAP. And like with all what was happening around us with all the technology-driven changes, society-driven changes, we really felt that the old system of reorganization, restructuring doesn't lead to a real purposeful end. So when we started to think about what the focus of our organizational development practice is, we thought about the topic of leadership, we thought about the topic of teams, and then the big question that we had overall was how to make an organization adaptable. And as we all don't know how the organization looks like, and if there's really like this one blueprint, which we don't think there is, but we certainly had a hunch of saying, well, most certainly organizations that will survive more successfully in the future will be the ones that have, well, in the core, a more a stronger focus on the topic of self-organization. And self-organization means, in short, and this is where also the notion of unlearning hierarchy comes from, is that we need to rethink the way we look at leadership, right? So where we come from and how organizations are built was that leadership and the people that did the job, so the thinking and the handwork, the execution, was separated back then. And although this is like many decades ago, our organizational setups and the way we think and act on leadership is frequently pretty close to what has been set up initially. And it doesn't work in terms of operational organizational system anymore. And we see and feel this more and more and more. And so the question was, well, what needs to change then? And what we thought needs to change, and this is what we hear in every interaction with our leaders and top executives in the company, is that we need to rethink the topic of leadership. We need to think about the topic of power. We need to address this topic. We need to address the topic of authority, of decision-making processes. And although, especially in the German cultural area, the topic of power is not used as much, and people try to avoid this term, it's something that we really need to confront ourselves. And why do we think so? Because and Xiaoqun, you said that nicely before. It's not about just educating the leader. It's about like going into the system, working in the system with the system, and qualify it for a future orientation and for future fitness. And this means that the designated leaders at the top of the organization, they need to start releasing some of the power. They need to start distributing the authority a bit more in the teams. And then there's the other movement that is the ones that have just delivered what they have been told to. They need to step up and they need to make leadership as a conscious choice and say, well, I'm not a designated leader on paper, but I'm taking this ownership, I'm taking this leadership, and I'm really going to take this step forward that I wouldn't have done in the past. And so these two movements, so from the leader, the designated leader from the top, going down a little bit and distributing his or her authority and power, and then the rest of the organization taking the other movement. These are two movements that need to take place at the same time. Both, I would say, are equally difficult. And if this happens, then the system gets really shaped, right? Because, if you look at the leader, and he would, if he would confront him or herself with that change, then the question is, well, if I'm not taking the last decision, if I'm not, being fully responsible on budget decisions, on recruiting decisions, so who am I, and what justifies my higher payment, my higher grading? That's the one big question, and there's a lot going on in individuals when they need to release this power and ask this question. And then on the other side, a very interesting quote that I heard in my environment was when I transferred more authority to people was, Daniel, I think that's beyond my pay grade. And I think this is a very representative attitude, I would even say, of many people in the organization who were used to being grown up in an area where they were just told to do things, right? And so this more of responsibility, this more of taking the ownership for their own work is also something difficult, because out of a sudden you're in a situation and you're taking decisions that might have implications that you weren't so much aware of it, right? Because it was also, I guess, somehow comfortable to say, well, see, this goes up until this stage, and then I'm just doing the upward delegation, right? And then I'm not responsible. And that's also, of course, a nice way then to find some scapegoats in the organization, which can be the leader, because at the end, it was his or her decision. I just provided the PowerPoint, and I think this is a real cultural shift that we need to make. This doesn't mean that hierarchies don't exist. They will always exist in any constellation. In the animal world, it's pretty visible, but also in the human world, we always see it. but we need to change our way of dealing with hierarchy and not take it as a granted, but see how functional it is and how functional it can be to build a purpose-fit organization. And this is, in summary, a little bit the endeavor that we are taking here at SAP.
I like your metaphor of this bidirectional movement, like letting go of control and power and stepping up and taking it. I think that's really essential. What's the number one resistance you're facing, Daniel?
Old patterns and the habits, right? I mean, as I said before, and that's the second part of the hierarchy, unlearning hierarchy. I mean, if you talk to Gerhard Hüther, he would kill me, but when I say unlearn, because basically there is no unlearn. It's not like in technology that you copy paste a new operational system into people's heads. It just doesn't work like this, right? So when I talk to neuroscientists, I think what they gave me as a picture, which I very much like, say, guys, I mean, you have been driving on the same Autobahn years and years and years. You have created your mental patterns, right? And just to move from this one Autobahn to the other one is like a huge effort. And it just doesn't help if you do it once and you change your mind, your attitude once, but you need to drive on this different lane years and years and years again, right? And I think the biggest resistance is the individual, but not the individual as such, because he or she is super resistant, but like you've been born and raised in an organizational system that expects something from you, right? So it's not only about my choice to act in a certain way, and it's not about my choice to say, well, then I'm just transferring authority in the organization. This is a process. This is an active, let's say, transformation that needs to take place. And of course, on the one hand side, it's behavior and attitude that comes into the play, but also organizational structures, right? If we look into unlearning hierarchy, it's not just working with the sole leader at the top of the organizational charts. It's about working with the entire organization and then more fundamentally working on the level of systems, processes that are often not in line with what we actually want to achieve in the future with our organizations. So there's not this one barrier. I think it's a nice mixture that I guess keeps us alive for the next years. And honestly, I mean, it's a journey, right? I mean, Xiaoqun, you said that before. It takes like 2 years from top to shop floor, and changing an organizational system with the culture. I mean, that's a journey. It's a huge journey, probably without a destination, right? We always will stay on that journey.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Great. So I like this metaphor of journey, Luise. If we look at the journey that lays ahead of you, so you just joined Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Vestas for the offshore wind business. What's your agenda? What is your plan? How is your approach to attack the topic of culture, of leadership, of hierarchy, of agility? So is there something like a recipe? Is there an analysis thing? You've gone through quite some different companies with different cultures. So can you share that with us? Luise?
Yeah, I was unmuted. Yeah, I'm still here. So yeah,
good.
Well, super cool input that the panel has come with, absolutely. And I think I was nodding all the time while you guys were speaking. So it's very, very interesting to be part of. To your question, Karsten, the journey that I've embarked upon at MHI Vestas is it is still of transformational character, but it's in a different context. So MHI Vestas is, as you said in your introduction, a joint venture between a Japanese culture and a Japanese company and a Danish company. So you have two very extremely different cultures that have to cooperate around this business. Now, the joint venture was established 5 years ago. And so it's a very young company, you can say. So is there a real culture already? I think I try to see, is there a culture already? And the company has grown from 400 people to 5,000 people within 5 years, and they're expected to grow exponentially with another 5 over the next 5 years. So how should I say, is that culture, is that not? Of course, there must be some culture, but it is more a startup culture, I would still say, even though it is a joint venture that stands on the shoulders of two giants, because these 5,000 people already were just thrown into one bucket and say, now do it. There's still a large entrepreneurial culture there right now. The transformation that the company now needs to do is to go from this kind of entrepreneurial culture into a more professional and stable culture. And that doesn't sound very sexy, does it? Because, we rather, in most companies say, well, we want to stay entrepreneurial and blah, 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 blah. But actually that can eventually kill a company if you don't put some structure to your business when you grow so fast. Mm-hmm. So the task that I was given was say, Luise, now with everything that you see across the value chain, how do we make sure we connect the dots all the way from first customer contact until we actually erect those massive wind turbines above the sea level? And so how do I approach that? I would still approach it in a very, very classical way. I completely agree with you, Daniel. We need to disregard hierarchy. We need to find those people who are willing to step into that journey with me. So I will be pulling people in from across the value chain. I don't care what level they are on. Those that are ready to change, those are ready to think bigger, they will be part of this transformational group that I will be leading. And then we will sort of design the new normal, the new business backbone for this company that we need to establish in order to grow at the same pace as the company has grown at this point. So far, because the majority of the people have a history in the wind industry, these are already extremely brainy people. They already know what to do. They are just waiting for somebody to set the direction and tie it all together. And that will be my task. So I think this is probably one of the easiest tasks I've had in my career so far, because the willingness is there, the will, and everybody can see where we're going. Everybody can see the purpose. And if we draw a little parallel to Corona, I mean, when Corona came, we all instantly transformed like hell into living in the virtual world. I mean, that was a transformation without leadership. Everybody just stepped in because everybody saw the necessity. And I think it's a little bit the same where I've arrived now at MHI West. Everybody understands that we cannot grow at the same pace if we don't get our ducks in a row, if you want to say so. Mm-hmm. So that's maybe food for thoughts for this group here, maybe the foundation for change is that we need to make sure that everybody just sees the urgency, the need. And how do you do that? Well, either by having a crisis like Corona, or maybe just by very, very, very clear communication.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think what I also hear from the different panelists is that depending on where you are, in which place, there are different challenges for the culture. What is the next step, right? For you, it might be, what is the structure? What is the direction? How do I get alignment? How do I channel the motivation and the commitment into a healthy direction? Whilst for others, it is maybe breaking up the structure and getting things to move again, right? So that maturity level, that also seems to be important. Thank you. So Xiaoqun, you are now in a position where you move from executive board member to supervisory board member. How do you, and I mean, Infineon, Capgemini, Alliance Austria, and then there was another one that I forgot even. So and your role is an advisor not only on technology but also on even macroeconomic development. So what is your recommendation to the companies that you help supervise? How should they prepare for the future?
So Karsten, this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all answer to everybody. What are my observations during my board duties? There are differences between the player who are already playing at the top, means they're already very well established in terms of a portfolio which can have the sustainable growth for the future, and players who are still kind of struggling in terms of catching up, playing the catching up games. So different companies, every company has its own challenge. It's not like the top players would then have time to breathe and take a break. It's not like this. I think what we observed through Corona or the COVID, there is some lessons learned, I would say, in this manner. So first of all, I think all the feedback I got from the companies is the employee are very supportive in terms of switch overnight from working in the office to working from home. That's not the issue at all, none of these companies. The second is suddenly, I think for a lot of companies, the liquidity become a big top priority, right? Because if no revenue comes in, are we going to survive? Can we still pay, the purchasing we have bought, or can we still pay our employees? Do we have a sufficient liquidity to survive for a period of time, right? That become a major topic. Priority one, I would say even above digital transformation. So COVID is probably an accelerator to tell everybody digital, we will be living in a digital world. That is no question at all. Everything what you have done in terms of digital transformation before, you need to accelerate that 2 times or 3 times. Everybody now accept this. This is no question at all. The question is how, right? How to implement it. I think for a lot of, as you said, Luise, everybody knows at the strategy level what needs to be done, which is pretty clear. The question is how get it implemented. Now, not only how get it implemented, how get it implemented in a speed which is necessary to cope with the market changes. I think this is a big question for all the companies. And the second question is through Corona, we all realize the whole world is so connected geographically, which has been embedded into the whole supply chain, everything demand side and supply side. The geographic connection become so permanent. Now people are thinking about how can we decouple the whole world instead of, to couple. I think the connection of how connected we are make a lot of companies to rethink whether, the whole optimized process or production before the just-in-time delivery, built to order, that was actually the best practice before COVID. Those are still best practice for the future. Because not just profit is the most important thing. COVID taught us, I think, there are ethic values we need to take care of. As I think the triple bottom line quote is exactly their planet issues we need to take care of, their people issues we need to take care of. So this becomes things I think the board are more open up to think about what is the real big picture and how the world is connected and what does it mean to our strategy, to our portfolio. I think this become a more permanent question. The strategy and portfolio, I think it's not just about innovation. People think about innovation is maybe one of the driver, but it's not just only about innovation. Innovation alone or technology innovation would not give you a sustainable growing future. I think you need to think about how to balance my portfolio in terms of what the society is going.
This is fascinating. Right? Yeah.
What the society is going, and there are urbanization trend, there are environment trend, There are a lot of multi-generation issues coming up. What people is working for. People is not only asking for payment, a paycheck. When people buy stuff from a brand, it's not just because it's good. They are looking at what this brand stands for, right? Mm-hmm. What do they do for the planet? Mm-hmm. So those are all the things coming up. I think this is a new dimension, a requirement for both the executive and also for the board. Shareholder value is not the only value to be strived for now. So this is what I think observe.
Thank you for broadening this horizon for us and giving us this overview also on the macroeconomic dimensions and on the resilience of supply chain, which is a new dimension, and that this drives different behavior than optimizing for profit if you optimize for sustainability and for resilience. Thank you for that. Jürgen, you are one step before creating a company that is fully standalone. When you think of preparing your company and the company for the future, what's on your mind? What is on your do list?
Well, actually, it's an incredible, interesting journey to establish a standalone business. And what are our main priorities? I think last year we spent a lot of time on clarifying our vision, our mission, and then also our strategy. And to articulate this vision, mission, and strategy to our people, so starting to strengthen our communication in various forms. I think communication, it's all about communication today. And being in the industry now for 27 years, I think so much communication we are doing today, I haven't experienced myself in the last 25 years. So it's a completely new form. But it's not only about communication, it's also how to communicate. So we made a lot of experience about not only to send emails. So we trying different channels to communication. Personally, I have started to vlog, meaning video blogging, to give small videos to the employees, explaining our strategy, explaining the purpose of our doing and what it's all about. So also broadening the reason why our people are part of this on this journey. To make it even more precise, our strategic priorities we clearly communicated for 2020, so even before COVID, so in January this year. And it's quite interesting to see that in parallel to Philip Kotler, who said people, planet, profit. And we came also up with these 3 Ps. And it's very interesting. Our 3 Ps are people, product, and profit. And exactly in this order. So the most important priority for us, not only for this year, but we put it really on the top of our agenda, is people. So people satisfaction, and especially around all these topics mentioned by Daniel on leadership, on what is the right leadership for the future to make the organization not only sustainable and resilient, but also a good good place to work. And secondly, then the product, because I'm strongly believe if we do have the right people and if we have empowered these people in the right way, then they will develop the best products. And with the best products, the profit, which is, of course, important for an organization, will come automatically. So therefore, the clear order, and I repeat it within every telephone call, within every vlog, I say clearly, it's always people, product, profit, and of course then the entire communication around it. And now we have started the process on, as described earlier, on the values and principles we want to live. And therefore, next week we will start a series of workshops with our employees to engage them actively in this process to identifying the right values for us as a standalone business. And I think this final step for the next couple of months will be interesting to see, especially how these values perhaps may change due to the course of COVID-19. But actually, I think COVID-19 is still a relatively small time frame in terms of our cultural ideas we want to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jürgen. One sign of a great discussion is that you're running out of time. I'm getting tons of messages that we are kind of a bit late, but I would really like to continue this round because I think this is the essence, and we will have to be adaptable afterwards to fix the rest of the agenda. So, Marcell, if we look at Celonis, when you think of preparing Celonis for the future, what kind of next steps are on your do list?
So that's a great question. And definitely, as we still see ourselves as a startup, or now it's fair to say with close to 1,000 people, grown up startup, we definitely see our future in continuing investing in technology and in the people to drive the digital transformation and to provide cloud solutions, which really can help customers to become better and also drives their digital transformation successfully across all the different areas. And of course, we need to grow because we all know how it is with technology. Therefore, the adoption in all the different markets, geographies, industries is absolutely key for us. But that's also very important. We decided that, number one, we have now defined our core values, which we have introduced to our team, that we need also to ensure that we have the right culture. Because when you hire, and now I've seen an email came yesterday about the new hires for this month, it is 43 people, you need to see that you really have also a foundation of values which helps you to drive and be successful. And that's very important. And therefore, I really admire the strategy, what our co-CEOs have established together with the executive team to ensure that in the center are definitely our people. And with great people, we can focus also that our customers achieve great results. So I want to keep it short. I know you're running out of time, but I hope this helps a little bit to share some insights. And we really hope we can go from the 100 million to a multiplier of that in the next years, and seeing a lot of companies being successful in defining their future as well.
Thank you, Marcell. And we will obviously follow you and the development of Celonis going forward. Daniel, closing statement from you. So when it comes to continue your journey or the journey of SAP, when it comes to the approach to hierarchy, what's next on your do list? What's the big challenge to tackle next?
Good question. I think the biggest challenge is to what we've done so far was a little bit of an exercise that we did below the surface. So intentionally, we didn't say, we give us the big brand and saying, so this unlearning hierarchy, we have 20 people doing this. It's a small team right now that works on this very topic. It's I think the journey of making this public in the sense of getting the buy-in also from the board. So we had a good meeting with Christian Klein even before he came into the office of being sole CEO. I guess he understood the approach, which is basically a pretty different one, because usually organizations look into how can we make out of 10 boxes 5 boxes, how can we turn 2 boxes into 10. And then shift it from horizontal to vertical, just to be a little bit ironic on this one. And that's a different approach. So I think getting the buy-in from the top, plus giving this process a little bit of time. right? Because I think, and what we, I guess, heard so many times here, speed. And I think that's precisely the nature. It's not that we can choose if there's speed or not. I mean, it's the way things go. But we also need to think about the meaningful piece of it. So, of course, we can do something pretty quickly and then transform it and think, okay, once it's communicated, it's done. But the human piece in the equation will always be the same, right? Although the world changes a lot, people need to adapt, and people need to become more adaptive. But at the same time, we are still human. We're still humans, and we still have or face the complexity that change is not so easy, right? And so, even if you got it here cognitively, you need to also bring it into your day-to-day mindset and actions. And I guess this is the biggest piece. So, getting the involvement and the skin in the game from our board members, and then also like putting some kind of a protective shield over the organizations that really need to turn upside down and give them a bit more time on this. I think these two challenges would be the biggest ones.
Thank you, Daniel. And I think when listening to all the five of you and all the different organizational challenges that you're facing, it really becomes clear that different organizations in different maturity stages need different kind of interventions in order to go the next steps in terms of culture. And I think that is a great representation. I will open it up to Doris in a second to maybe go through 2-3 questions from the audience. There are probably more, but we unfortunately are solidly over time. So Doris, what are the key 2 or 3 questions from the audience?
Just a sec.
We cannot hear you.
Sorry. You can't hear me?
So I take over.
Yeah, okay. I've got it.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Meinolf Meyer. The question to the panel is unlearning hierarchy or becoming more innovative really a matter of culture, or rather something in organizational development processes?
So is it culture or the process? I'm not sure who wants to take this. Daniel, it looks like it's targeted in your direction. But
I can have a try. Not sure if I fully got the question, to be very honest, but I still try to answer it. So I think the topic of unlearning hierarchy or like we position it is, as I said, a deliberate notion and provocation, but then also connected to an action that we take in order to, look at our, let's say, bureaucratic illusion that we sometimes have in companies, that we say, well, that's the org chart and that's how the company works. And I mean, we all don't know it doesn't work like this, right? I mean, an org chart is an org chart. It tells us something, but especially in bigger companies, the informal hierarchies, the informal connections and relationships are even more important. And I guess SAP is a great example for this. So yes, it's part, I'd say, of the culture of an organization, because I mean, I have worked at Siemens, Deutsche Telekom, and at SAP, so 3 huge DAX companies with always over 100,000 people. And from the outside, you would say super different. And then there are some things that are pretty similar and others surprisingly very, very different, although probably they're even in an industry that is in the vicinity of each other. So certainly it's a cultural thing on the one hand side. The organizational development practice, I would say, is a mean to get to a certain end. And we don't define that end. And I think this is very important. We don't go into organizations and say, you guys need to get more self-organized, because that's not our dogma that we're attached to. What we do is we go in, we have a conversation with the leader and the team, and we discuss with them about where do they want to go in order to, design a purpose-fit process to get there and really understand what their motivations are behind. Because just saying, hey, I want to become a bit more agile, I mean, it's nice, right? But the question is not so much, can I turn my organization into a tribe? Can I develop new roles? But the question is, what is fit for purpose? And we spend a lot of time in the beginning to really do that analysis and to get that understanding of where we want to go and what is the pressure point here. Because we don't want to get people just into a process and say, yeah, we want to go and become more agile. Question is why for? So that's my view.
Karsten, I would also like to say a few words about that. Is it a culture question? My personal view on it is absolutely. And is it a company culture, or is it more I would say, a regional culture. So why am I saying this? When you work in a Scandinavian corporation that has a Scandinavian origin, you don't have a hierarchy necessarily, because in Scandinavia, the underlying culture amongst people in daily life is that everybody is equal. Everybody is on the same level. No matter what trade you are, no matter what money you make, we as a culture in Scandinavia, we don't have the need to be higher than the other. So when you have an organization that it has its origin in a Scandinavian context, that hierarchical discussion is not really necessary. Mm-hmm. So from my experience working in different corporations with different origin, I definitely say, yes, it is a cultural thing. What to do if you want to change? I believe personally you need to change the top of the company, put in individuals all the way at the top who show this by their person, by their way of communicating, the way they are, that power doesn't matter. It matters who you are and what you're capable of, not where in the organization you are. So can you just take a very theoretical approach to changing that? I don't believe in it. I think you need to make some drastic changes in the top if you really want to succeed in this kind of matters.
Great. Thanks, Luise. Thanks, Luise, for that. And now I have to put my time management hat on, unfortunately. And I would like to thank the panel very, very much for your insights, for the variety, for the breadth of your experiences, and sharing this with us, taking the time for being with us. This is so great. So thank you very, very much for that. We are very grateful for this. And you are all invited to stick around. Obviously, during the discussion, we will be in smaller groups after the break. And then we can take it from there and maybe have more discussions and continue this. So thank you very much.
And what have you learned, Karsten?
I've learned a lot of things. I like particular the statement from Daniel Vonier from SAP, this notion of letting go of power from those who are leading and stepping up and taking on power from those who are being led. This is obviously a very difficult process that cannot be ordered, but it fits very nicely also with the results of the study that we conducted before the actual panel discussion. So what is it, what kind of culture is it that we need in organizations in order to be ready for the challenges of the future? And the outcome were more creativity, more risk-taking, more cross-functional collaboration, less silos, more trust, more psychological safety, faster decisions, increased flexibility and adaptability. And I think this is the things that are really the essence. The question is, how do we get this going? And this is precisely also the topic of this podcast, to hear examples, listen from leaders, from thought leaders, how they are approaching the situation, what they see working and not working.
What can we look forward to in the next episode of Leaders Talk?
My next guest is going to be Daniel Vonier from SAP. He is in charge of unlearning hierarchy at SAP. That sounds very provocative, and we will try to understand what this means in detail and how his work, how his teams are going forward to achieving this bold goal.
This was an episode of Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world, powered by Leadership Choices. If you want to give us feedback, please send an email to leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. Thank you for listening.